right. Well, cool. Yeah. So let's see here. So our community chooses a topic every month, and then we bring in, supposedly brilliant folks like yourself to to
Experts.
to to share, as you said, your sage wisdom with us.
Mhm.
This month's topic was how to generate revenue in Web3 games. But what I thought was really interesting about like your thoughts on that is like you have had firsthand experience on some very successful Web2 thought processes and strategies, and it's almost like a return to basics, right? Like I talking about the fundamentals. So yeah, so super excited to have you.
Sure. Thanks. Happy to be here.
Hey, what's up, Tom? Welcome. Okay, so for the folks who don't know who you are, James, unlike myself, uh, can you give us a bit of a walkthrough of who is James? What is James?
That's a long and complicated thing. James, as it relates to gaming, perhaps.
Sure.
So I got my start, I guess, 13 years ago. Uh, I just graduated with a master's in economics and was just looking for a job in SF because I wanted to stay here. And really applied to like everything on Wikipedia. And really only a company called TinyCo contacted me um, for a data analyst position, which I got hired for. Um, and then I was working there and quickly realized that any of the analysis I did, um, really there was no one to kind of action on that. So I started just doing it by myself. So I kind of became a product manager. Um, that went well, and I ended up joining Family Guy: The Quest for Stuff team, which was kind of TinyCo's Hail Mary pass. It was our biggest game ever. So I joined that on development through release. And there was a great team lead at the time who was kind of doing everything. He was definitely overworked. And I realized if he were to ever leave, that'd be really bad. So I started just taking on some of his tasks. So I learned how to like tune the economy and handle some of the smaller events that we were working on while he handled the bigger ones. He ended up leaving shortly thereafter, um, in the middle of our Star Trek event. It was our biggest event ever. So I took over the team at that time and kind of led it pretty well, I'd say. Everything went off pretty smoothly. That event was successful, and then I kind of set about growing the product team from there, because the product team at the time at TinyCo was like 2 people, I think. So I kind of helped onboard new people, hire them, and train them how to run Family Guy, which was a very specific type of game with a lot of IP integration. Yeah, that went well. So I kind of stepped back into more of a manager role, managing the product team, while we worked on our other games, like Marvel's Avengers Academy, Futurama Worlds of Tomorrow, and Harry Potter Hogwarts Mystery. Yeah, so I stayed on for like, I think about 2-3 years in that role, before leaving to join Knock Knock Games, where I met No Autopilot. Yeah, I just sort of lead games. I'm happy to spec out games, or lead a product org. Yeah, I guess since my days at TinyCode, which was acquired by Jam City, been working on kind of either chat-based games or blockchain games. Brings me here.
You know what I've always really liked about your journey is like you didn't necessarily intend to get into gaming, and then
Mm-hmm.
like the responsibilities that you were given, like you really earned. Like you were proactive in seeing
Mm-hmm.
deficiencies on your teams or risk, and you just worked really really hard to like skill up and be able to prepare to plug in if opportunity arised. um,
Yeah, definitely. it was weird. Never meant to get into gaming. Was more into economics, but it is related, and I ended up, tuning economies. Um, but yeah, that might be my advice for people like starting their careers is just take stuff on that people don't ask you to take on. And like I went to the head of product and was like, "Hey, I'm just going to start doing this feature. Like, can you help give me some instruction for what to do with this?" And like he took me out to lunch and we just went over every price point and how to segment players and everything, and that's how I learned product management.
Damn. Damn. Okay. So like so um I think one thing that really kind of stands out on your resume, and admittedly I used it too when announcing this event, you know, that Harry Potter Hogwarts, you guys were able to generate, what was it, $500 million in Web2 revenue. Like that
Yeah.
is ridiculous, right? Like that's an insane amount of money. Um, I guess can you kind of talk to us a little bit about that experience, and then maybe specifically like what you think made it do well versus maybe some of the other titles you had worked on.
Yeah. Uh, Write down. Yeah, so I guess my experience is a little strange because for Harry Potter, that was the first game where I really wasn't kind of hands-on day to day, where I was more head of product or VP of product at the time, kind of overseeing things. Um, and that product had started, and the CEO at the time was leading that project for years. Um, and there were just a bunch of different things going on at the studio at the time. And I ended up taking it over while it was like 2 years into development or something. Um, and it needed a bit of a reboot at that time. We got a new lead for the game team. There are a bunch of different approval processes to go through with the Blair partnership that owns Harry Potter and Jam City, who had acquired us in the middle of development of this game. So there was just like a lot of like very high level management stuff that I did on that side, making sure that we stayed true to like the game that we were trying to make, which was very much modeled after Kim Kardashian Hollywood, just sort of an interactive narrative game. Um, I was involved in like overseeing some of the specs directly and UX directly, but definitely give it to the team for managing almost that entire project. But what I think made the game do well, and it has done really well, if you look at all the Harry Potter games on mobile, I believe it's still the most profitable. Um, and I think that's because the game that we made is just most true to what the user base was looking for. Very casual, narrative heavy, which fits with the very, very broad audience of people who love the Harry Potter brand. You get to do everything that you want to do as a student at Hogwarts. Um, and, the mechanics are not super complicated or niche, right? You're not just playing a sports game or trying to equip your character to fight in duels. It's very broad based in terms of what you can do. It's essentially an RPG, just very, very light. Um, that combined with just first mover advantage, which I would never ignore that. We were the first to market with a Harry Potter mobile game. That goes a really long way. Also, in mobile in general, there's been a lot of consolidation in the market over the past few years. And companies really are focusing on games that are already successful and not really releasing new games. So you see this a lot with like King and like Candy Crush, right? That game is ancient. It's from, I don't know, 2014, 2013, maybe earlier. They've really focused on going back to basics, trying to figure out how to increase monetization there, enter new markets, retarget their players rather than kind of releasing new games. So that's kind of why I think Harry Potter is also doing well, is just that it kind of entered the market at the time when the market was starting to focus on that. So since it was immediately successful, I think Jam City really pivoted towards investing in that game and keeping it alive for a long time, rather than kind of setting their hopes on new games.
Gotcha. Yeah, so real quick, shout out to Erasmo, Sweaty Yeti, Harrison. Good to see you again, Harrison. And Tom, you get another shout out. Why not? I'll give you two. Um, yeah, one thing that I keep hearing, we've had a couple Web3 founders in, and like the importance of timing, the importance of being like a first mover, um, really can't be understated. I guess like it kind of makes me think, like in Web2 mobile gaming, it's quite a difficult task to target effectively users, and I think that's why we've seen so many developers kind of come into Web3. Um,
Mhm.
I guess from the different systems that you guys implemented across these games, are there ways that you think they could be implemented in Web3 that maybe folks haven't explored or haven't done a good job on? Um, yeah, and if so, what are those?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Um, Different systems. It seems like the market is kind of just throwing the kitchen sink at Web3 games and seeing what sticks. Uh, to me, I would really think kind of the opposite way instead of taking things from Web2. Um, think of Web3 and what you can do with Web3 and what new gameplay types that creates. Because I think like Web2 evolved because of the App Store and because in-app purchases were a thing. That led to the types of games that make use of in-app purchases. Um, and like Web3 can certainly do in-app purchases as well. But also, the market does draw people who are interested in, the blockchain elements of Web3. Um, so I kind of focus on just, pushing the boundaries of new gameplay because that can just create new and fun experiences, whereas no one wants to play Candy Crush Web3. Um, and for me, I guess as an economist, I would just love kind of more of an economy focused game. Um, where like you essentially act as like the Federal Reserve to just keep the money supply going. But then in general, the game is very kind of zero sum in a way that you would take away from other players and add to your own balance by the same amount. I'd love like a super competitive game like that. I think just exploring that aspect of blockchain would be interesting.
Mhm. Have have you taken a look at any of these fully on-chain games, or and maybe not because it's kind of seems like more of a bubbling trend recently, um,
Mhm.
but it's kind of interesting like what you're saying, because there's now a lot of games that are looking to develop fully on chain, so like their entire economy is on chain, and they create kind of a governance structure where the community can mod or edit the game as they see fit, and it like leaves from the creator's hands and is put into the community's hands. And it just seems like a really great way to experiment with what you're just talking about. Like, put it into the wild. Let's see where it goes.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, it reminds me of a pitch that I made before Knock Knock with one of the co-founders of Knock Knock, Andrew Green, which was very much sort of like an economy sim game. And now we have like the ability to actually do that. Um, I would say like, you know, putting things in the hands of players might sound fun and interesting, but also might just not work, right? Like those people are not economists. Um, People vote for their own interests or capture the market. Um, I guess I've always fashioned myself as like a dictator when I come to games, um, which I don't think is necessarily good, but I think like you need a person with a vision to execute on, and I think that definitely served me well. Even if it rankled a lot of my coworkers some of the times. Um, so like I personally love just like one strong studio to come in with a real perspective, um, and like great economy designers to create a game, and of course take player feedback into account, but maybe not just hand over the reins to them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely right. I've always heard kind of like a guiding hand strategy where you can certainly take input, but someone who has credentials in game design, economy design, should still be the guiding hand to make sure it doesn't, you know, doesn't implode on day one.
Yeah, like I think of any games where it has been sort of fully community grown, and I kind of struggle to even think of examples. Um, and there's probably a reason why it just doesn't work. But like even when you think of like how art is created in any media, we rarely just let everyone do anything they want, or even come up with like a collective way to do it. Um, the thing I always think of is that Reddit experiment where people could sort of color in a little square on a large kind of tapestry. I forget what that project is called. It's years old now, but it was just sort of all of Reddit coming and like taking territory and communicating and producing, basically a piece of art, but like fighting with each other, sort of like a clan to come together and create the thing that they're trying to create, right? Like if you want a piece of that square to be an American flag, you need a lot of people to agree on that and execute on that. Um, and I think of like that as like a really interesting example of people just coming together and kind of with a very little amount of rules, creating something that's really fun and interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, now it's gonna bug me because I know what you're talking about, but I can't recall its name either. But I remember
I'm
like
sure I ever did.
zooming in to like each little
Mm-hmm.
section and be like, Tommy sucks, or like just like the most random things. Um,
Yeah, but I think those things are like super rare in everyday life. They are great when you can do it, but it's difficult to do.
yeah. Okay. All right. So I guess like going back to your game, your time at TinyCo and Jam City. So were there times where you guys were trying to fine tune or magnify or increase like the revenue that the games are generating, and then if so, curious to hear like what tinkering you guys tested with to try and like pull on some of those levers.
Yeah. So basically, my impression, which is different than the reality, when I was working at TinyCo and Gem City, was sort of the house was on fire all the time, which it wasn't. Like we were making millions of revenue and tons of profit. Um, but I don't know, upper management somehow instilled in us a sense that things were bad and we needed to make more revenue all the time and work super hard, pull late nights, and we were always pulling content forward, releasing stuff earlier and earlier, developing as fast as we could, and shoving more stuff in an update. So we were always trying to increase revenue. Um, the thing about games, especially, is you launch your product to a lot of media hype, you get a lot of downloads, and then basically your DAU falls forever, which is difficult because that means like you're past your peak of revenue after month one. Um, the thing on Family Guy that really worked for us was the third party IP integration. So we had like hundreds of different characters from dozens of different brands put in our game. Basically, what Fortnite is doing right now. It's like scary how similar that is. Um, so like in Family Guy, you could see the alien from Alien or the xenomorph from Aliens running around. that helped us just get a lot of social media views and clicks, and people came and downloaded our game. The most effective version of that we did was there was a Peter Palooza, which was a music event. I'm still not quite sure why this worked, but we basically reached out to different artists like Snoop Dogg, Kiss, Avril Lavigne. It was a really weird mix of things, but it drove so many installs. I think even though it came out like a year after the game's release, or maybe 2 years after the game's release, um, it basically was as good as the initial launch of that game in terms of users and revenue. And ever after that, that user base that came in with that event was the second best user base that we had. Um, like people from the initial launch stick around for a really long time and spend a lot of money, and people from this event stuck around for a really long time and spent a lot of money as well. Um, so yeah, I'd say that social media engagement definitely helped us the most. Other than that, I think it was pure product management of figuring out how to do live ops, live operations, as seamlessly and quickly as we could. So basically, we would do an app update probably once a month, but we could do live ops anytime. So we could push new config for the game, launch new characters, new events, even new UI reskins, all from the server. So building that was sort of an engineering component, but from the product side, we focused on features that were just really reusable and reskinnable. So you wouldn't even necessarily know they're the original feature. And I had kind of led that by bringing in a mechanic from Heyday, which in Heyday it's a farming sim. So you like get a bunch of wheat, put it into whatever you call a wheat processing machine, and like you get bread out at the end of the day. So I kind of implemented that feature into Family Guy, which is basically take many inputs, get one output. But to make it reskinnable, we could get one input, many outputs, many inputs, many outputs, different types of inputs lead to different types of outputs. And we could reskin that feature as a different machine. So sometimes it was like a concession stand at a movie theater. Sometimes it was Santa's workshop. So I think just focusing on being able to run live ops really quickly and make people feel like it's new and fresh features every time was critical for us keeping the game running. And to my knowledge, Family Guy is 9 years old, almost 10, which is absolutely ancient for mobile games. They still use that feature, I believe, to make new events seem fresh to players.
Damn. Okay, so there's a couple things that chew on there. One, I tried to drop the video of Snoop Dogg talking about Peter Palooza, but I'm recording this session. If I tab over, it's gonna jack up the video. So if anybody has that and you want to share with everyone, that'd be great. Okay, so kind of thinking about like our audience right now, it's a lot of bootstrapped founders working with a small amount of capital. Maybe they've gotten their seed round, so it's like a small team. And thinking about like cool marketing campaign and partnerships, like I imagine getting Snoop Dogg to talk about your game was kind of pricey. And then for live ops too, I think maybe that's an area where the smaller teams can shine, because like once you kind of build the system, maybe it's easier to ship cosmetic like wrappers around it or expand on it. But even then, with the small team, it seems kind of it's a challenge. I guess any insights on either of those things?
Yeah, or you mean like any insights for what people at this stage would do?
Sure. Yeah.
If they can really do live ops or social media.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the problem that I see with a lot of new startup gaming companies is they're led by people with a passion for game design, which I know that sounds monstrous. And I am a monstrous Web2 PM. Um, it is great. You need passion, you need great game design. But I think that a lot of the times that can be the enemy of making money. Um, I've seen a lot of game designers join mobile, and they came from kind of traditional like console game design or PC game design. And they just really rebelled against the principles of monetization in mobile games. Um, but the designers who embrace those things really excelled in their career, um, and made everyone happy. Right? Like you can't fight against the system. Um, so I'd say like these are passionate builders. You need to kind of be able to step out of that passion and see it as a business, right? A lot of people want to come in and make this great like narrative game with tons of art, and it's really just an experience to play kind of slowly. You need to focus on what players want to do in a short amount of time that can make you money, right? You might be able to sell a standalone product for like $50 on a marketplace. Um, that is kind of that's definitely a way to do it. That can often be like you release the game, you make a good amount of money. Hopefully, you make back what you put in, and then it's kind of over. It makes a couple bucks a month from there on out. If you want a game that kind of grows its user base, is reliant on say like cooperative gameplay or competitive gameplay, you might need to toss aside some of what you want to build, right? I look at a game called Marvel Snap. So this is a mobile game. But if you download it and play it, if you're anything like me, you'll be like, this is super weird. This is not at all the game that I was expecting. I was expecting Hearthstone, but with Marvel characters. And it's really not that. The character cards you want to collect, but there's really not a good way to pay for them. And there's not much interesting on the cards. What is interesting about the game is that it takes place in different cities. So there's 3 cities in a turn. And the cities are interesting. And I'm like, man, they could like sell the cities, but they don't. Those just come out at the start of a turn. But I think it was like a really deliberate decision from the people who made that game to not focus on what Marvel players expect, but focus on what this game needs, which was like very short sessions that are extremely strategic for how short they are. Like it is like I think a exactly 2-minute round or something. Could be wrong. Very short. It's as strategic as it can be in that amount of time. So it's not actually very strategic. It's very casual. But they went for that. And they kind of hit that target on the head precisely, which I give them a lot of commendation for doing. So I kind of think that is like a lesson that you guys could learn is don't just make the game that you want. Make the game that makes the gameplay that you want your players to have, if that makes sense.
Okay. So I love that, by the way. Because, I mean, you know me. I always have great ideas, and I'll spend an afternoon jamming on one, only to realize that, in the grand scheme of things, maybe my time could have been used somewhere else. I guess so. Like, what is the process you use, or you've seen teams use to stay on course? Like, okay, we have these 10 ideas. How do we know that this is going to get us to where we want to be?
Yeah. What I always did was back of the envelope calculations. So say you have 10 games. You just sort of walk through what is the potential for each of these games. So say we take Family Guy. One of the first things that I would do if I were to like think about that as a project was just how much monetization is in the game. If you put one player in the game and they buy literally everything, how much can that player spend? The answer to that question on Family Guy is literally like $200,000 or something.
Mm.
Um, just absolutely insane. So we really like unlocked the or unleashed what a whale can spend on that game. And I'm not saying that you have to do that. You can have, a game that you can only spend $5 on, but then you need a lot more users to spend $5 to make that profitable for you. So yeah, I would literally probably just like rank the games based on like raw amount of money that could be made, if players are engaging in everything that you want them to engage in. And like this doesn't have to be microtransactions, right? Like you could take a revenue share from NFTs that are traded or whatever you want to do, but then you'll be able to at least estimate the potential for each of those games.
It seems so fundamental and rudimentary, but I've probably worked on half a dozen Web3 gaming teams, and I don't think any of them have really thought about it like that.
Yeah, always be fundamental and rudimentary, in my opinion. Also, another kind of, what would you call it? Uh, Another fundamental thing is the 80-20 rule. That 20% of our users were responsible for 80% of our revenue. It was true for everything I've ever seen. It's probably also true for Web3. And even like within those 20% of users, the top 20% of those made 20% of that revenue. So it was just absolutely exponential, in terms of what whales spend, right? The top 1% of users is responsible for like 95% of revenue,
Mm.
So think about like how your game responds to that, right? Can whales be a thing? Can people spend more if they want to? Some games that I see are super simple, and there's really no way to unlock that upside for a lot of payers to spend money in your game. So yeah, I would look at things that basic. Of course, you can keep going way deeper and model out and project things, but I would definitely start there with just back of the envelope calculations.
Very cool. Quick shout out. What's up, Dante? Welcome. Dante is ex Gameloft, if I'm not mistaken. Let me know if I'm wrong, Dante. Okay. By the way, folks, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. You know how this works. If you want to come up to the stage and ask some questions using voice, that's totally fine too. Yeah, what's interesting is when you go to balance an economy, like the purpose of a whale is just, I feel like it's so different in Web3. Because like if you have a whale in a Web3 game, they're expecting to extract more money than they've put in by like a large magnitude. And so like it's hard to incentivize that behavior because all the other gamers who don't have the amount of money to buy like, $10,000 cosmetics or whatever are also expecting to extract some sort of multiple of what they've put in. So it's like a really interesting challenge to try and bring these two different parties together. Or like in the Web2 game, okay, this guy's just running around in like a OG season 1 cosmetic, cool. But in Web3, maybe that cosmetic gives him some sort of a multiplier on like his staking rewards or airdrops or something. So it's just, yeah, it's really really complex to balance, I feel.
Can it be balanced would be my response to that.
Yeah.
Right, like not everyone can get a multiple out of what they put in. That will not work. That's a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, that's why Axie fell, right? Like yeah, so one concept I think is interesting to explore, and this is a slight tangent from today's conversation, but I love indie games. I love backing just creative people making cool games. And so, I've participated in Kickstarter campaigns before. I'm not really expecting to get any money out of it. Maybe I get a cool little character or like a shout out on a video or something. And I wish that model could be brought to Web3 and we could like somehow distance ourselves from the straight monetary extraction view of individuals supporting these games. Like, yeah. I don't know if you got any thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I'm not an expert on Web3 nearly as much as you are. I kind of feel like we do need to move away from people just playing games to expect returns. And that's why I think that you do need to leverage the tech in fun and new ways so that people want to play the game for the sake of experiencing something new. And I think that's also why I'd love to see like a more economy simulations, because there would be essentially no upside, or at least people would not expect an upside. Maybe some people would have an upside, but I think that would just lead to people playing the game to experience what you can do with blockchain and ownership. That can be fun and feels like real life in a way. I go to this game, The Long Dark, that I played. It's like a winter survival game, but everything is sort of like a stat. So you might chop up some wood, and you have a chance to like get a branch from that, and then use that wood to make a fire. But that fire has a chance of not starting. Mm. And you climb this hill to get to a house that will keep you warm, but you have like a chance of falling and breaking your ankle, stuff like that. I'd love to see like a super stat heavy game sort of made where, you know, people's possessions that they own on the blockchain could be used for this. And it would have like real world implications, not real world, but game world implications. Where people are kind of like collectively trading in a reality-based economy without just sort of it becoming a Ponzi scheme. Yeah, a Kickstarter type thing with Web3. I'm sure someone's already working on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely feel the need to move away from games where people are expecting a payout.
There's
what was ever paid out in Web2? Essentially nothing, right?
Yeah.
People played Web2 games for the fun, and I'd argue a lot of those games aren't even fun. They're just addictive.
Yeah, they've been engineered to keep you into them as long as possible. I remember falling asleep. This is back in my League of Legends days. I remember falling asleep, and I can hear the sound of gold hitting my wallet from killing a minion. And I'm just like laying there like, I kind of feel like playing League now.
and like, why? What was the benefit? It was just entertainment or some sort of chemical imbalance that it was creating in your brain that was fun, right? And I think that is what games need to be. So yeah, I'd like to see a focus on that for sure.
There's So there's a project that I'm doing some marketing support with called Last Resort, also Game Loft, out of Paris. And it's a survival crafting game. So it's kind of similar to what you had mentioned where, you know, you need to go out into the wild. You need to find some batteries, some rope. You know, you need to cut a tree. You need to try and take some of that wood you've cut and, you know, process it into something usable like a axe handle. Yeah, it'll be super interesting. You know, if players can be turned into business owners. So like maybe you don't have time to go out and chop wood, so you go to a local lumberjack who like Just has a bunch of logs ready to go. Like super
Right. It's almost like
interesting.
we planned this conversation because, yeah, this game does look a lot like the game that I mentioned.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's a super sick game. I mean, we're running into the same troubles. I think a lot of folks are. Is that that game and the community we built around it was probably built with $50,000, and it's really difficult to squeeze out a quality experience on that type of a budget. And so, we need to get we need to be fundraised in order to kind of keep our live ops cooking, ship more and more updates to it. But the market has been it's been tough, and back in the bull market, a single game title in Web3 was more than enough. Oftentimes, if you had like a playable demo that was half decent. Now, like, a lot of the thesis has shifted to the studio approach. So they're not looking to back single games. They're looking to back someone with a plan to ship 5 games, and it's not impossible, but it just makes it that much harder to make your first game any good.
Yeah. Well, I guess the unfortunate aspect of gaming is that 90% of games fail.
Yeah.
Almost immediately.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it might be difficult to raise investment for a single game, and then you need like a pedigree to raise investment for multiple games and creating the studio.
Yeah.
So, yeah, hard time for indie developers, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and that's honestly kind of why we brought this conversation top of mind, because if you need to prove that pedigree, obviously there's no better way to do it than to show that your game has some players and that you're generating some revenue, because that's likely 99% better than most of the other games out there in the same position. So it's super interesting to kind of hear about your experiences in Web2 mobile. Hopefully there's some solid takeaways for you guys out there. Hopefully this was a good jam for everyone.
Yeah, I guess I'd just add that a lot of what I've heard in investment is to really focus on retention and user base. Because with a lot of players, you can monetize them. If you don't have a lot of players, it doesn't matter how good your monetization is.
Yeah.
So in that regard, you do want a game that retains well and interests people to download it in organic ways or viral ways. So yeah, I would focus on those things if you're looking for investment over monetization at this point. It's always easy to add monetization later.
And see, and that's what ties back to your point earlier about like back of the napkin math and keeping scope creep to a minimum and focus. Because again, like if you're a single founder or you're a small team, it's really difficult to build a vertical slice that is fun, but you have to demonstrate some of those initial metrics to get the ticket, to get some funding, to hopefully build out the rest of it. Yeah.
I would say too, like people go to create fun games, which is great, but a lot of retention of users actually comes from like struggle. So you want a game that does frustrate people some of the time. Some amount of frustration is usually good in games, not all games necessarily. But frustration can make your player base grow, right? I log into Fortnite the first time and I just get like sniped out of nowhere, right? That makes me want to come back and play. So I would look for making things that people respond to rather than like, fun, frictionless experiences.
Man, yeah, you're reminding me of my early league days. Like I remember the first time I logged on, there was some guy smurfing unranked, and I didn't even know how to like use my abilities, but here he is getting pentakills and shit with Master Yi. But then it
Yeah.
spun, like an 8-year career playing League. So yeah, I definitely get what you're saying.
Yeah, and competitive games are great for that, right? I play Rocket League.
Mm,
It takes like years to become good at Rocket League, and the people who are still better than me are astronomically better than me. So that's something I love about just uh, competitive games is that the skill cap is based on the player base, so it can be infinitely high if you make a good game.
yeah. Wow. All right, folks. Yeah. So any last questions, comments, concerns that you want to share with James while we have him? In the meantime, James, do you want to maybe share like how some of the help or support you could provide founders if they need it?
Yeah. So I guess a lot of people weren't here at the start. Just to kind of quickly recap. So I started my career as a data analyst, um, kind of putting in tracking events, analyzing soft launch data. Started building features, and then took over like tuning the economy, uh, running the product team, um, and kind of stepping into an upper management role of managing multiple games. So yeah, I guess you'd call me primarily a product manager. Um, so product managers really focus on, I guess, the topics that we talked about today: monetization and retention, how to build features, uh, and like taking inputs from the community, figuring out what to do with that, and trying to kind of grow your user base that way. So yeah, I'm totally open for a chat or to help you guys in any capacity that you can think of there. Product managers are pretty much kind of generalists. We just focus on monetization and retention for the most part. So yeah, I am kind of just open to a lot of stuff. I'm also just sort of experienced in the industry, so I've hired in a bunch of different. I've hired people from a bunch of different roles. Um, so I have advice for things like when do I need a director of art, or what kind of artist am I looking for? When should I add an animator to the team? Any kind of logistical operation questions as well.
Perfect. So it looks like we got a question from Tom. Can you drop your social links here so we can follow you to stay in contact?
I'm not a social person.
LinkedIn, maybe?
I guess LinkedIn is fine. I'll just put my real name. I'm doxing myself here.
Perfect. It's what we've always wanted.
There's a lot of James Boyles on LinkedIn. Very popular name. I can drop my real link. Give me a second. There
Yeah.
we go.
Perfect.
Cool.
I see Tom's typing there. I'll check on that here in a second. Oh, got Erasmo typing as well. Tom says cheers. Cheers back at you. Erasmo says thanks a bunch. Thanks a bunch, bud. Cool. All right, everyone. Hey, thanks for joining this session. This is super cool. James, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to kind of share your story with us and your hard-earned knowledge and lessons, so we could try to incorporate it into our founder journeys. Everyone, thank you for showing up, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks, guys.